What's up, guys? Welcome back to the Lights Out F1 podcast. I'm Patrick. That's Jakob. And we had Canada today. Uh, what were your thoughts on the entire weekend?
I thought um, it was a messy weekend for everybody. I think with the rain on Friday, rain on Saturday. Um, the race kind of underwhelming
Mm.
towards the beginning, and then kind of spiced up towards the end. Yeah, I thought it was an interesting. The back end was
Yeah, it felt like the race didn't like the safety car felt like it should have done more, um, and it didn't because I think just because of how early it was, it felt like people who well actually just Pierre Gasly was on the soft tire, and he didn't even pit under that safety car.
yeah,
So it felt like a lot of people who should have pitted probably didn't, and some people who did pit probably shouldn't have, just because it looks like the medium tires could have gone for much longer.
yeah.
But I think everybody was complaining about how long or how the tires weren't doing very well in the first stint. Um, and I think it makes sense because I mean there weren't any feature races for F2, F3, or any GT cars the track, so unlike Spain or Monaco, there's the track's not rubbering at all, and then it just rained. So even if it was, this is done.
It was a pretty good track, at
Mm.
least for the beginning.
Mm.
The level was pretty well.
Yeah. Um. So Max winning, Checo making I think P6 was it, behind the
Yeah,
Ferraris. So
yeah.
not really much to look at for Red Bull. I think the hype for Checo possibly challenging is now officially dead. There's no chance for that. Um,
He lost the follow by driver.
now it feels
He
like
has to,
yeah,
now it's like he didn't even compete for the podiums. So.
yeah. We need to see him. We need to see him just stay ahead of Fernando, and even that feels like a very difficult task
Oh
because
yeah,
yeah. Speaking on Aston Martin, they brought their upgrades this weekend. Fernando made them work.
yeah. It's just Fernando's carrying the team. I mean,
Yeah.
it was like the last time we talked about it, Lance Stroll is not really anywhere to be found. If by some if they pull out P2 in the constructors,
Mm.
it'll be because of Fernando Alonso.
Yeah.
So it won't be because of Lance Stroll. So
Yeah. I
you know,
think they fell behind Mercedes in Spain, and I think they just went behind, or they got a little bit closer since Fernando was ahead of Lewis today, but I think they're still like 13 points behind. So tight battle
yeah.
for second. I don't think Ferrari are really in that battle.
No, I think everyone seemed to think. I don't know what it was. Everyone seemed to think that today was like a good day for Ferrari. They messed up the strategy. They are further away from the top two teams, top three teams.
Mm.
I don't know how anyone who's a Ferrari fan can look at today's race and say that was a good day for
I
us.
think they could say that only because it's an upgrade from what happened in Spain.
Yeah,
So
but even yeah, true
yeah,
points. Yeah, but even then they were like miles off the pace,
they were.
miles behind Red Bull and Mercedes and Aston. Well, Fernando and Lewis
Yeah.
taking with their teammates.
Mm.
So I was like, how is this? And towards the beginning of the race, Albon was holding. I think it was Albon. Albon was
Yeah.
holding them up nicely, right?
Yeah. He was sitting in between both of them, and he was chilling right behind one of the DRS, and yeah.
Yeah. So I
Um,
cannot. It was not a good day for Ferrari
yeah.
fans.
I mean, good for them for scoring 2 points, but that feels like it's a minimum requirement given that they're considered one of the top four. And I think the only cases where the top four teams like should be scoring is either A if your name is Lance Stroll, or B if your car gets strict, like George Russell.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at it over the, I mean, yeah, George had made a bit of an error, but if you look at it over the season,
Mm.
I can honestly say with like a lot of conviction that Williams have made a bigger step than Ferrari have over
Oh
the entire.
yeah.
Yeah. Like,
um,
okay, yeah, Logan was kind of useless and
yeah, he
didn't finish.
was.
Alex had a good race, and
Oh
you
yeah.
can see them making big steps.
Yes. I'll get to Williams in a bit because I'm so excited. But it feels like Ferrari, like, I think they did what McLaren did last year, where they took a massive sidestep in Spain. And then today, or I guess this weekend, the upgrades they brought were really upgrades towards the sideways step. So I wouldn't say it's like surprising them being 4 and 5. I actually expected them to probably be 5 and 6, maybe even 5 and 7 if Checo is a bit faster. But
Yeah.
George crashing out, and yeah, a lot of good factors for them. I mean, they did well to make the medium tires last as long as they did, especially through the early phase of the race. But
Yeah.
maybe if they would have had the pit strategy like pitted when everybody else did, they might have actually had a better chance of maybe fighting for a podium. But that seems kind of far away. I mean, I think they ended out like 31 seconds behind Lewis in
Yeah.
third. So,
Yeah. I mean, it seems to me that Aston and Mercedes have made a little bit of a step closer to Red Bull,
mm.
and Ferrari have just taken 3 steps backwards from Aston and Mercedes. Forget Red Bull; they're not competing with Red Bull. They've taken 30 steps back
Yeah.
from the second and third place.
Mm. If like I think the hype all comes from. I think it's pretty agreeable that it comes from qualifying because I think the Red Bull is just not good on qualifying pace compared to the other cars. It's just good
Yeah,
enough where like they can consistently get pole positions, but
yeah,
just not good enough where people can still like mildly challenge them for them.
yeah,
And so that's where a lot of the hype comes from. But then when you look at race pace, it's like nobody else is anywhere to be found.
yeah.
And it also could be due to the new track. I mean, the new
But like,
drivers. Yeah, keep going.
but wasn't it supposed to be that this track, because of the low speed corners
Mm.
and all of that, that Aston and Ferrari were going to be ahead of Mercedes on race day, right?
I
So
think
I
Ferrari
mean,
screwed up their car, because I think
oh,
this
definitely.
track and other tracks that like last year they were really good on, this year they're just awful at. And people are saying that like they had like a cornering machine last year. It was great in low speed, medium speed corners, even a lot of high speed corners. And now it feels like whatever they did to the car, they sacrificed all their cornering potential for a smidge more of straight line speed, and it's not worth it.
Yeah, I was actually reading something about this whole trade-off between straight line speed and cornering speed,
Mm,
and I don't know how far true it is. I think Dr. Helmut Marko had said something
mm,
to a journalist, and he basically said that they sacrificed cornering speed for straight line speed because the CEO of Ferrari didn't like the fact that they were slow on the straights. And and knowing Ferrari's leadership structure, that is an entirely plausible situation for them to be in.
that's awesome. Well, it's not good for Ferrari, but that's such a.
No,
No, I would have
it is an
never done
entire
it. I would have never done
no,
it.
yeah, yeah, obviously. But like it's entirely plausible situation for them to be in
Mm,
because Ferrari's leadership, like CEO, is always interfering in their F1 things.
yeah, it's so bad. Like it feels like what Ferrari CEO should probably do is probably do what Laurent Rossi did with Alpine. Should be like, stop screwing up and then just leave it alone. Because Alpine have started doing great since then. Like podium at
Yeah,
Monaco,
exactly.
points finishes, like
Yeah,
doing a lot better. But Ferrari CEO is
yeah,
like, I'm the team principal here, actually. Like you two, you're there.
yeah. It's kind
um,
of
but Mercedes, I mean, Lewis, awesome race from him. Looked
yeah,
for a while there like he was gonna catch Fernando, um, and I think you can clearly see the steps that are being made towards both what he likes as a driver, because I think he's been with Mercedes long enough where they just know, but also just like Mercedes taking steps towards the front again, a little bit behind, but they're getting there. And it, like Lewis was talking about it, I think he was like, we weren't as fast as we anticipated, but we're still where we expected to be. Like, we're still right there with the Astons and not quite as far away from Red Bull, although today was a bit of an anomaly. So, but what are your thoughts on, like, George Russell's incidents and where he's going right now?
I think. Listen, yeah, it's not like you can call it like a down form. I think it was just that he was pushing, went too hard, clipped the curb a little bit, the
Mm.
sausage curb. That's fine. He
Yeah.
was he was struggling to keep up with Fernando and Lewis, but I think
Mm.
that's also that he also has to realize that there are going to be races where he's not going to keep up with Fernando and Lewis
Yeah.
because like they're just that much better.
That and
And I
also,
also
like,
think that
they've been racing there for, like, 5 times as many years as him.
yeah, they're just gonna like it's gonna be the fact that at some races where they're both experienced enough, they will go off down the road with Max,
Mm.
and he will sort of be in no man's land.
Yep.
But I think as a car, yeah, we were behind Aston and Red Bull, but yeah, I think we're making good steps.
Yep.
And I think if the last couple of races have told you anything, it's that all that nonsense about Lewis sort of fading and George being the new team leader is sort of
Hmm.
rubbish now.
Yeah.
Because like Lewis was probably towards that back end. Lewis was probably pushing just as hard as George was in the
Yeah.
front spin, the first stint,
Mm.
and kept it clean, didn't bin it into the wall for some reason for no apparent reason.
Mm.
So I mean, I think as a team they're doing well. I think we could have used a lot more points, but it is what it is.
Yeah.
Things
It kind of
happen.
feels like I feel like Mercedes right now is kind of like a perfect example of how the season's going as a whole. Where like George might get the better of Lewis. I think he's 5-3 right now against Lewis in the qualifying battle. So like the qualifying battle gets exciting, but then when it comes to actual race pace, it feels like everybody's a bit behind, and in this case, George is a bit behind Lewis compared to, I guess, in the grand scheme of things, like everybody compared to Red Bull, or really just Max. And so, but I think everybody's taking those steps forward. I'm kind of interested to see. So before we jump into the next team, obviously the pictures of everybody's floors got leaked, and now that Red Bulls finally got shown, like everybody saw. And I think one of the interesting things was how different the concept was of the floor of the Mercedes versus the Red Bull. Because I think Mercedes is so used to giving Lewis this car that has a lot of outwash, and so like a lot of the air doesn't actually go onto the floor. Whereas Red Bull
Yeah.
took a very different concept, and then you look at things like um, the Williams, where it's about as flat as a piece of paper, and it's pretty simple,
Yeah.
but whatever. And so I thought that was like one of the more interesting things. And when it came to straight line speed, like that's the reason that the Williams is so quick in a straight line, because it doesn't have any downforce, so
Yeah. Exactly. It's a
it just
drag
has to
car.
be fast. It's a drag car.
Yeah.
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 Um. Okay.
It'll
Next
do.
team.
I have no doubt. I have no doubt it'll do extreme. Williams will probably do very well in Austria next week. The next race out. They will.
Hopefully.
They will. Yeah, Albon will probably do. Hopefully, will do as good as he did today. Just because like Austria is basically straight, 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 straight. So
Yeah, I mean, the second sector is quite a few turns. I mean, that's where most of our time will probably get lost, but it's mostly medium speed corners and a couple high speed
yeah,
ones. So hopefully we're good
but
through there. But
yeah,
uh, yeah, I mean, James Valles has openly said, it's not going to happen this year, not going to happen next year. It might not even happen
yeah.
the year after that, but probably like during the new regulation period is probably when we're looking to be good. But it is what it is. Austria is going
I
to be
mean, it's
awesome.
not as long as you're making forward steps.
Yeah,
Sort of climbing through the midfield, then you should be fine.
yeah. Speaking of which, we're P9. We're 1 point behind Haas, 2 points behind Alfa Romeo, and I think I'll take that. Honestly, that's
Yeah,
heck of a day. Okay, but this is the other half of it that I like. As much of a fan as the whole spectacle, um, it was kind of like a little bit boring, because it felt like Albon did the exact same thing he did last year in Australia, where
yeah,
a safety car came out super early and he did the entire race on a set of hard tires.
yeah.
And it's
I
even
mean,
more laps this time, which is insane.
yeah,
Uh,
57 or something like that. Right?
yeah, it was something else. It was some awesome defense against who was it behind him, Esteban Ocon and Lando Norris. Like to
Yeah,
have dead tires and to be still holding off two people on tires that were like 30 laps younger, that was
yeah,
amazing. But
yeah.
Alpine, Esteban Ocon had the most wobbly rear wing I've ever
It's
seen.
I think it's under stewards are the stewards are put it under or not. I don't know if they're investigating it,
Mm,
but they've noted it.
yeah.
I'm sure they've looked at it. I think he got a 30-second penalty for something like that. A couple of, was the last season maybe, or I was just listening to the post race show. There was a penalty applied because one of their parts was loose,
Uh,
and so I think if Underpark Firm maybe investigate and it's a loose rear wing, that could
mm,
potentially. Like he could potentially. I mean, I think he could potentially drop out of the points. Both of them actually, if they're both in the points.
yeah. No. Gasly was not in the points.
Okay, yeah. I
But also
mean,
that's another thing to talk about. Like, I think we all came into the season expecting Gasly to put up a really good fight against Ocon, and
yeah,
like because they're the same age, same place, both French, equal car, and yeah, like Ocon's built the team for longer, but I think we expected them to be a bit closer, and I think right now we can clearly see who's the number one of that team.
Yeah, I mean, I think I didn't really. I think that they're the same driver,
Yeah.
but I think Esteban Ocon. I've always maintained that Esteban Ocon has the edge
Yep.
because he's just that bit a little bit better. I
Hmm.
think the time with Mercedes and has benefited him.
Hmm.
He's just that little bit more aggressive, just that little bit more willing to sort of take things on the chin and move on from it.
Yep.
Whereas I think Gasly, the moment he got hindered by Sainz,
Yep.
his weekend just sort of fell apart. He just didn't go anywhere from it. But I think Ocon might have been able to take
Hmm.
that penalty better, and move forward with it.
Hmm. Yeah, it feels like he's not. Obviously, we know that Esteban's been with Renault Alpine his entire career, so clearly the team knows him inside and out, and it makes sense that he would be the team leader. But it feels like Gasly just hasn't like. I think we got a little excited because he was doing pretty well up until like after the crash in Australia, but then after that, I felt like he kind of just started stepping backwards nonstop, and I don't think he stopped stepping backwards.
No,
Um, and I think it also comes from his time in driving what was one of the worst cars on the grid in the Alpha Tauri. So still kind of getting acclimated to that. One thing I'm curious about though is we're starting to see like more issues with the teams and communicating with their drivers when it comes to who's stuck behind me or things like
yeah.
that. And it's one of the most annoying things because like I feel like impeding penalties shouldn't happen,
I
right?
think it's just for Rory. I mean, yeah, it should be. It should happen. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it shouldn't happen technically if you look at like how sort of high tech F1 is
Yeah.
and sort of like the way the cars operate and stuff. It shouldn't really happen.
Hmm.
And yet Ferrari have somehow managed to do it a couple weekends in a row now.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
uh,
That makes sense.
it was. I think. Yeah, I think Ferrari and like a couple others. Yuki got Charles and Yuki got no Sainz and Yuki got penalties, right?
Yeah.
Correct. I mean, so two on
Yeah.
a. I
Uh,
think for Yuki it's less concerning.
yeah.
For Charles, for Ferrari it should
Uh,
be concerning because it's the second weekend in a row, right? That they've got this
mm,
because they got one in Monaco as well. So I think it's slightly concerning.
yeah. Ferrari engineers annoy me. It's like, first off, what are you doing with the car? Secondly, what are you doing with your drivers? It feels like there's zero communication between them and their drivers at this point. I feel like everybody's scared to even talk to their drivers.
Yeah, it was interesting. I don't know. I think they're all firstly I think they're all scared to piss off Charles because like they
Yeah.
he hasn't he, you know they I think the fact that they didn't let Carlos attack Charles today
Yeah.
was so that I didn't like it at all. I was like, Carlos clearly has just a little. Okay, yeah, the second stint, Charles pulled a gap, but at first stint, Carlos had so much pace, and they were just like, no, he will not attack you. Now they're just like, what the hell's the point of this?
Yeah. Ferrari, I mean, still, they did the best. I'm pretty sure I'll call it the best they could today. Like, I don't think they would have gotten any better of a result. So,
No,
yeah, they just need to take steps towards recreating the car that they used to have because I don't like this new one.
no, yeah,
Um, Behind that, it's kind of like okay. Well, first McLaren, Lando,
good race.
unsportsmanlike conduct.
Yeah, I don't know.
Suddenly, we're talking about American football terms, so that's cool. But 5 second time penalty for him drops him down to 13th. I think Oscar finished outside the points too, so pointless race for them as well, which puts them even farther behind Alpine. And it kind of feels like Alpine have solidified themselves as the fourth place or the fifth place team now. Um, and in a way, it kind of feels like Alpine are actually edging really close to Ferrari as far as pace. Like their drivers are performing pretty well with the car, and the car actually seems like it's pretty good now. Like a solid fifth place, moving towards fourth place team. So I'm kind of curious. Like, do you think that towards the end of the season we'll see Alpine challenging Ferrari for identical places?
I think if the upgrade plan for or if like as Otmar keeps going on about the 100-day plan. I think if that goes on, so far it's worked out pretty well for them. If that
Yeah.
keeps going on in an upwards trajectory, I think they should be good to go. They should be good to be able. At least I think Ocon can challenge Sainz and Leclerc for similar spots in a race. It just depends on whether Gasly continues to step back or makes a step forward.
Mm.
But honestly, I don't think, even if he does make a few steps forward, I think on pure talent, I don't know if he's going to be able to compete with the likes of Sainz and Leclerc. I think Ocon can probably do it.
Yeah.
Just out of sheer, not maybe not talent wise, but just out of sheer like aggressiveness because he
Yeah.
is aggressive. I think he should be able to compete with them if the car goes upwards in a trajectory.
Yeah. So you think it's going to be like similar to the Mercedes versus Alpine or Aston Martin battle, where it's really one driver versus two?
Yeah, realistically, even like similar, but I think realistically, Mercedes and Aston Martin's hopes of wherever they finish is realistically pinned on Lewis and Fernando because like
Mm.
yeah, George's will be there for will be there reliably for most of the time. But I think the heavy point scoring finishes
Mm.
will definitely be scored by Lewis and Fernando. So um, I think that's the difference between Ferrari and Alpine and Mercedes and Aston. I think Ferrari at least Sainz and Leclerc are both competing for low positions, but they're still competing together. So.
Yeah. So back to McLaren. I feel like their drivers had a pretty good qualifying, and I feel like their race could have gone better. But I mean, what do you think's going on? Like, do you think it's just a case of them still needing to develop further, or was it actually like not as good of a race as it could have been?
I think it certainly could have been a better race,
Mm-hmm.
even if it was just like within the top 10. So say between 8 and if they could have got P8, P9, P10 somewhere there.
Mm-hmm.
I think it could have been a better race, but also like on raw pace they are slow. It's not like they're up there with the Alpines.
Do you think that like Lando is kind of outdriving the car right now?
Oh, 100%. Piastri is probably driving within the limits of the car, like Ricciardo used to do, just a little bit better than Ricciardo.
Mm-hmm.
Lando is probably outdriving the car. Lando is definitely putting that car places it should not be in the hands of the. So I think it's probably disappointing for him to have to deal with the subpar car that he has. But I think I don't know. I don't really haven't seen anything to believe that they'll compete with Alpine over the next.
Do you think his like hope for McLaren is kind of unfounded? Like him like, constantly saying like, I can see where the team's going. Like they have all this, like they're clearly investing in new stuff, but like don't see it going anywhere yet, right?
Yeah, I mean, like where has it gone over the last? This is the third year of new regulations.
Second, yeah.
Second year, and we're we're still young into the regulations, but there are other teams have made steps forward. Mercedes made the step forward. Alpine, leave out Ferrari. Williams, Haas have made the step forward.
Yeah.
Alfa Romeo slightly, but not really. But McLaren just seems stuck. Like they don't really know. There's no to me over 2 years it doesn't. It's in the second year they still don't know where they're going with it, right?
Yep.
So I think I don't believe that they'll compete for best of the rest or podiums over the next 2 years. I think Lando definitely, if he's looking to move, I think with Checo performing as badly as he has, I think that for Red Bull seat might be time to finally sign a contract with Christian Horner.
Yeah, and it's also interesting because Checo, I think he drove for McLaren at one point, so it would be kind of interesting to see like maybe McLaren if they really can't retain Lando, because I think he's openly like stated like he's devoted to McLaren for their project until the end of 2024, because they'll officially have their wind tunnel, they'll have all their new executive staff and whatnot, and if the car is not good by the end of 2024 after all you've invested into it, understandably he could leave a year early from his contract. But also, like, Checo, he's very good with any car, really. I think it's kind of, like, a lot of people don't get impressed by his career because he's only, like, before he got to Red Bull, he was only on the podium 10 times, including that one race win. And after Red Bull, I think he's doubled that tally, but he's still a pretty solid driver, and I feel like the type of driver that McLaren might need. Plus, I feel like he could, build up Oscar Piastri into a better F1 driver.
I mean, yeah, but I don't think that'll happen. I think Zach Brown will want to promote the many young talents that he has retained over the last few years. So, like, he'll probably take a look at Colton. If Lando leaves, he'll take a look at like Colton Herta, or like Alex Palou, or the other guy. I
Yep.
forgot his name.
Or possibly Mick Schumacher. I mean, he is technically part of
Yeah,
their
Mick.
academy, even though he's technically Mercedes reserve driver.
Yeah, I mean
Um,
Mick would be a good. I think give Mick a second give Mick a second chance.
yep.
If Toto Wolff can convince him. But
Mm. Stepping backwards, James Key. I think that's his. No, not James.
James Key,
Uh,
McLaren's technical.
yeah, he went over to Alfa Romeo officially, so he'll be there
Okay.
for 2024. Uh, what do you think about this move? Because like Alfa Romeo clearly needs something to work. Valtteri Bottas no longer playing second gunner for Joe this race. He got a point, which is nice, but I mean, it feels kind of weird to hire somebody who's worked on a car that seems like it hasn't moved anywhere, right?
Yeah, I think this is an Andreas Seidel hire.
Mm-hmm.
Andreas Seidel really seems to like James Key,
Yep.
and I think James Key has a reputation of doing more with less.
Yep.
He did more with the McLaren in 2020 and 2021
Yep.
with less resources, and I think in the short term till Audi completes its takeover.
Yep.
Yeah, so I think in the short term, I think he will be a good sort of more with less kind of guy
Mm.
for Alfa Romeo. And then when Audi's finally kicks in and starts the Audi takeover completes, I think then you can sort of take a call depending on where Alfa Romeo are in the standings. But I think it's primarily on the side line. Like,
So you think he kind of serves like just like a placeholder until the Audi project actually starts getting
I
underway?
mean, he could because Andreas Seidel's running the Audi F1 team essentially. So he could very well stay on as technical director.
Yeah.
But I think at least I think if I were Andreas Seidel, I would be like, if you want the chief technical director role for when we finish the takeover, you need to get this team a little bit higher in the standings
Yeah.
than where we are.
I think they're
So
sitting on 9 points right now. So
Yeah,
anything's better
I
than
think
what they're at right now.
I think it'd be a prove your worth type situation. If I were Andreas, I'd
Yeah.
make it a prove your worth type situation.
Mm. Kind of on the drivers of that team and like their performance as a whole this weekend. I mean, they got a point, which
Yeah.
is more than a lot of other teams can say right now. But it was again like not a super impressive weekend. They kind of went under the radar the whole time. So
Yeah.
I mean, do you think it's just a case of they just need to wait until they bring more upgrades, or is this just a case of like waiting for, like you said, like the Audi project to actually fully kick in?
I think if they want to like compete this year, because they're at 9 points.
7th place.
They're seventh place. They're only 7 points off of so they're 8 points off of McLaren in the standings.
Hmm.
I think if they, Audi obviously that'll be good. Eventually that'll be a great takeover. But I think catching McLaren is a very realistic possibility for them based on points.
Hmm.
I think if they can bring like some upgrades that will improve the pace of the car, sort of quality pace and race pace,
Hmm.
I don't see why they could not catch. I don't see a reason why they can't give McLaren a run for the money at least.
Yeah, that would make sense. I don't really see that happening just because they need a lot of work to like. Yeah, Valtteri and Joe can put up these 1 or 2 point performances, but I think they're gonna need a lot of work if they want to hope to. It takes so much effort to get 1 point in these races. Like,
Yeah.
you're really preying on one of the top 8 drivers or 7 drivers, really, because Lance doesn't count. You're praying one of them to fail, and you're also hoping your competitors happen to have a poor weekend.
True, but like if you look at it probability-wise, McLaren are having more poor weekends than good
That's
weekends.
so true.
Like, name a good weekend they've had so far.
Monaco.
Realistically. Okay, Monaco. And Monaco is also like an outlier.
Yeah, sure.
It's like quality is everything, and if you can shoot for quality, you're good to go.
Yeah.
But I think it's a possibility if they're willing to put in the time and resource for it. I think it's a possibility for them. I think that should be their goal. At least give them a run.
Mm-hmm. I feel like Haas should probably be in the same boat. I think we all got a bit excited, and I mean we're still expecting them to do this, but we got a bit excited because they're supposed to be operating close to the budget cap. But Nico Hülkenberg, even with a 3 place penalty, was in P5, and I don't think they scored points today. Which,
Well, yeah.
yeah,
I don't know what it is, man.
yeah,
Like Hulkenberg puts it like he's like their qualifying beast. He's a qualifying beast for them. And like in the race, it's just as soon as those rear tires get hot, it's like backwards.
yeah. He feels like how George Russell was at Williams. Like qualifying was absolutely spectacular, but in the race,
Yeah. So
yeah.
I don't know. They had some good battles though. All credit. They had some. There was some
Yeah.
good racing between them and Nick DeVries and Yuki and Lando.
Yeah, I
So,
kind of wanted to get into this. So that battle of Nick DeVries versus K Mag, I think Nick might have done a bit too much of a send it on the first corner.
yeah.
I mean, it didn't feel like it was going to be a viable like battle, and I don't think it would. It just wasn't worth it. Um,
Yeah. He probably also had to realize that he's not going. It's like you're going against K-Mag, who's not really going to give you an inch of space, and he's going to fight it all the way through.
yeah. And you guys are fighting for
So,
18th and 19th. Like what?
yeah.
What was
So
the point?
I mean, I think the next couple of weekends will sort of dictate Nick DeVries' career at AlphaTauri, or at least
Yeah.
till summer break. I think if he hasn't, I think if this performance level keeps going on, I think by summer break I could see them sticking Liam Lawson or someone else in the car.
That would be
Yeah, I mean,
awesome if they stuck him there.
Daniel's sitting around,
Yeah.
But
It'd
I
be-
think Red Bull values it.
Yeah, it'd be awesome to see Liam Lawson in a seat finally. Like, yeah, he hasn't won F2, but he is a very solid driver, and I mean, he showed like in the Red Bull that he could still put it in a free practice session up in the top 5, which
Yeah,
it was a Red Bull, but you still gotta have some pace to be like get it up there.
yeah,
Um,
true. Yeah.
And so I feel like he's probably one of those drivers who does deserve a chance. And Nick DeVries, he's probably
if-
about the same level as Logan Sargent, and both of them right now feel like they're kind of pointless being in the sport.
Yeah, I think if Nick DeVries sort of gets fired, I think he'll probably like return to the Mercedes stable of reserve drivers.
Yeah,
But I think he goes lower down the priority in terms of getting drives. I think
yeah.
it's Nick and then Frederick Vesti and then
Yep.
probably Nick.
Which, I mean, yeah, it feels like I'm not sure if he like fully like cuts bridges with Mercedes when he left for the Red Bull Driver Academy. Like, he's 29, I think, or going to be this year, and it's like he's not like a K-Mag or a Daniel Ricciardo where he has like some ounce of merit behind him outside of like feeder series. He actually hasn't done anything in Formula One so far. Like, he's had a couple of okay battles, but outside of that, there's been no real chances for points, no awesome qualifying performances, and quite frankly, he's broken the car like 4 times this year already on a team that doesn't have much of a budget to begin with. So it
I don't know.
just
Yeah, I mean,
yeah, it's
It's
not
either like it's either you get banned or it's even if Logan Sargent gets fired, I think Toto Wolff will push hard. Um, Toto Wolff will push hard for Mick to get that seat. So
Yuki, not much of a weekend. I mean, we were all like singing his praises and whatnot, but also this was supposed to be one of the harder weekends for them since their car sucks at low speed and medium speed corners. And so we weren't actually expecting much from them this weekend. I think it's fair to say that. And they hit about right on the marker. But next weekend we have Austria, and I'm expecting him to be fighting for his usual 10th or 11th place. And it feels weird to say, like, that's awesome for him, but in an AlphaTauri that doesn't get much, the idea of him consistently fighting for P11, P10 and that 1 point at a time type of ordeal, like, I feel like that's because one of the things that a lot of people have been looking at. Well, okay, maybe you're pretty much right there. Honestly, nobody's really going to give Max a run for his money. At this
in a Red
point.
Bull, Max is in a Red Bull versus Red Bull. Nobody's really giving Max.
Yeah. Red Bull versus anything right now, Max is winning.
Yeah, I mean, yeah.
But there's been a lot of like, I don't know, a ton of YouTube videos like dissecting how each driver races and like If there's one thing that Red Bull drivers always like having, it's a strong front end, which is why Daniel couldn't cope at McLaren or Renault because they didn't have that. And basically, any driver that leaves Red Bull like struggles outside of Red Bull because most teams like cars that are understeery because they spin less, whereas oversteery cars spin more unless you know how to control them. Max loves oversteer. Everybody knows that, and any driver that's come out of Red Bull loves oversteer, and that's why they can't handle cars that have understeer. As people have started to dissect Lando's driving style, they're like, he would be the optimal like second Red Bull driver because he loves a good front end. Like the more wobbly the rear end, it's fine, but the more stable the front end, the better he's driving. And so I feel like he it wouldn't take him long to get acclimated to that car. Plus, he's still pretty young. I think he's 23. So he's
Yeah,
chilling if he goes to Red Bull. Like he has so much time to learn.
yeah. I mean, like, I'd love to see him in a Red Bull. I mean, in a Red Bull or a Mercedes, I'd love to see him in either one of those
Mm.
cars because it'd be a great. I think it'd be great for him, and it'd be great for the sport.
Mm.
'Cause,
I don't want to. It's going to sound weird, but I actually don't want to see Charles or Orlando go to Mercedes.
I will
it just
you
it just doesn't seem right. Like nothing about it seems right.
yo.
It's hard to put a finger on exactly why, but like in my mind, like Lando makes sense for me because he seems like the optimal like Red Bull driver in the event that Max actually gets sick of the sport or he needs another second driver. Um, but I don't know why Charles just doesn't seem like he'd like it or he would do well at Mercedes.
Yeah, I honestly I think Mercedes is exactly what he needs
Mm,
because I think Ferrari treat him too much like he's God,
yeah,
and his driving just his driving, he is talented, he is a world champion. It's just that he isn't doing that. He isn't driving at the level that he should be right now.
yeah,
I think Mercedes. I think if Toto continues to be team principal, I think sure there might be some kiss assing to get him to sign the contract,
yeah.
but I don't see him being treated as a golden boy in Mercedes
Oh,
because
definitely not. No.
Mercedes haven't ever really done that. They've always said you guys have equal opportunity, and then my summer break, whoever's leading gets priority.
Yeah,
And so, I don't. I think Mercedes is exactly what he needs. I
mm,
think he'll have some good driver management with Mercedes' driver guys. He'll
yeah,
have good engineers, good strategists, an efficient team overall, and he'll have a team principal who isn't scared of him, really. Who isn't like, oh, I'm so sorry, we're
yeah,
gonna fix it. He's gonna be like, nah, this is what happened. Deal
yeah.
with it. We're gonna move on as a team. So
I feel like you said
I
it
think
best about Ferrari. Like, they're so scared at this point to mess up that they won't move forward. And it's like,
yeah,
I feel like, all the other teams are making steps forward, like knowing the risk that, hey, this upgrade might not work, or hey, this strategy might not work, but we're still going to do it and see if it works out. Whereas Ferrari, like, today was a perfect example of it. They brought the upgrades and everything, but this was probably the safest race strategy they could have done. Just one stop, you skip out on
yeah.
the extra like 19 seconds for the second pit stop, but it's like they don't take the risk anymore, and it's just they need such a structural change at Ferrari before anything happens with the drivers.
I think, yeah, and I think if you look at other teams across the grid, like leaving Red Bull out because they're winning,
Yeah,
so they don't really have to be scared of like Max leaving or anything.
yeah,
No other team is really that scared of their drivers. Like upper management isn't scared of the drivers. Alpine, no one's scared of the drivers. Haas, throughout the grid, like with maybe McLaren to an extent, but not really because
yeah,
he's confirmed his commitment.
yeah,
Mercedes, we conflicting messages about the contract with Lewis, but everyone fully expects him to sign one.
yeah. At
And
least to
then
the
you
end
look
of
at Ferrari.
this regulation period.
Yeah, he wants to race for a while. And then you look at Ferrari,
Yeah.
and they're just they are petrified of Charles, petrified,
Yes.
and they're so scared of not screwing up that they're looking backwards and then taking a step backwards.
Mhm.
They're not looking forwards to take the risk to move forwards.
Yeah, it's like they're so focused on, how to keep the cars behind the behind that they forget how to catch up to the cars ahead. And like
Exactly.
that's how you like maintain a race, but you can't win a race like that.
Exactly. Yeah.
Unless you're in first, then you don't have to look in front of you anymore cuz
Yeah.
And quite frankly, I don't even think Max looks behind him anymore.
Yeah, I mean, didn't he almost like lost the car at like towards the end of the race, and then started laughing.
Yeah, he
was like,
started
yeah.
laughing after the chicane. He was like, I almost lost it for a
I was,
second.
I was like, any other driver in that position would have shat themselves.
Yeah. I think last thing, but so Checo at Red Bull, it feels like he has one prerogative this year at this point. It's just to get second in the drivers. It's really the only thing he has to do. If he can't do that, then like yeah, he's a good driver, but Red Bull haven't ever had that 1-2 in the drivers championship, and I think that's what they want more than ever right now. And so I think that's all he needs to be looking for. And I don't think it's a case of the car is not towards him anymore. It's not a case of, Max is like belittling him or anything like that. It's literally just his own racecraft. Last year they made it, and this year I think they're going to do it again. They made a specific chassis just for Checo. Like, not even so that Max could try it out. It's just to make Checo more comfortable. It didn't do anything. So, like, at this point, it's like, drive the car that you have, and if you can't get second, Helmut Marko is not going to love you anymore. I don't think he loves you anyways.
I think Helmut Marko is like, I think he's like, summer break, baby. I can't wait for summer break. But no, I think Checo, he's in danger of, it's a very realistic possibility that Alonso and Lewis could overtake him in the standings.
Yeah.
I could see him dropping out of the top 3. I think he finishes maybe, if his current form of racing continues, P4, P5 maybe in the standings.
I can see P4. I can't see P5 just because, like, George is consistent, but I don't think he's as fast as Checo right now. I don't think Charles and Carlos are anywhere near him right now. So, a solid P4.
P4 is like the lowest he could possibly drop to, and it is based on what's going on. It's very realistic.
Yes,
that can happen.
It is. I think he's 9 points ahead of Fernando right now.
So, Lewis is catching up. Fernando's catching up. So it's not like over the next couple of weekends, Lewis and Fernando are just going to disappear.
Yeah,
they're going to. Yeah, so I think Helmut Marko is honestly waiting to like axe him. Like I think he's so done with Checo right now.
But like, I think it'd be the most like unjustified thing, and I think a lot of people recognize that, and so that's why they're not probably like, even at the summer break, if he happens to fall behind, I don't think they'll give him the axe just because like he's still a pretty solid driver. But end of the year, that P3 is not going to save you, dude.
No, yeah, I think Helmut Marko will cream him over winter break. Will ream him out for what he's doing, and then if he doesn't capitalize, then
or over summer, but
Daniel Ricciardo is right there in the wings. Everyone at Red Bull seems to be saying that Daniel is back to his old self. You've got Yuki, you've got other drivers who could take that seat.
Yeah.
So as much as he is a good driver, it's like Red Bull's goals are 1-2, and if you can't deliver that goal, then what are you doing?
Yeah. The thing is, like,
at least.
Yeah,
sorry, let me just, at least with we shit on Valtteri all we want sometimes, a lot of the time. At least he delivered on Mercedes goals every year. And if that was a 1-2 or, finish here, finish there, do this, do that, he delivered consistently and reliably.
Yeah.
Reliably.
For the most
part. For the most part. Checo really hasn't done that over the last couple of seasons.
So. No, he's not. It's tough. I mean, to be fair, like, we do need more consistency from Checo, like, on every race weekend, but the times that Max actually doesn't have a good race weekend, he does deliver pretty well. Like last year at Silverstone, when Max had damage, like Checo ended up I think he got second place that race. And it's just basically the times that Max doesn't do well, Checo does, but we also need him to perform well on the races that Max does do well.
Yeah, exactly. And like let's just take today for example, right? Hypothetically, let's just say Max had like actually lost the car when he hit the curb.
Yep.
And he got stopped, didn't like finish. It would have been Fernando, Lewis, and then whoever was in P3. Charles.
Yeah.
Was it Charles?
Yeah, Charles.
Yeah,
Charles would have gotten a podium.
So, like, where was he to cap? Like, if his current form of, like, current racing form continues,
Mm,
if Max has a bad weekend, he's not going to be there to capitalize because Lewis and Fernando are going to be ahead of him. Even the Ferrari will be ahead of him, one
yeah.
of them at least. So, what use are you at that point?
Yeah. Yeah. Um, that's basically all we got. But just a quick update. You probably haven't looked at it in a while. I've been keeping tabs on it. The F1 Fantasy. Um,
Um,
right now, before they tally up the points for Canada, I'm in first place by almost 100 points. Claire's in second place. Super fan. Ezra's in third. We still gotta get him on. And then I'm actually in fourth place as well. So
oh, yeah. I am
yeah,
not.
it's pretty
Oh,
bad. And I'm pretty sure like anybody listening probably realizes that like the only reason I poke it like how poor Lewis has had it for the past couple of years is solely to make fun of you. But
mm.
both of my teams are named Max is better than Lewis and Mercedes is unnecessary.
I thought you were getting that
Yeah.
now,
Also, in case you guys are wondering, none of our teams are able to use. Well, I'm not able to use Mercedes or Lewis Hamilton, but I'm still able to
Yeah.
use George. You're not able to use Red Bull or Max Verstappen, which is probably hurting you so badly for points.
Oh, no, 100%.
But yeah, and then I have the Valtteri Engine Factory in eighth place, so always a good time. I think after this weekend, I'm probably gonna take 1 and 3 instead of 1 and 2 or 1 and 4. So I'm looking to get the one thing that Red Bull haven't gotten. I'm looking for a 1-2 in this in this league. But
Yeah.
anyway, that's all we got for you guys. I made Jakob do it last time, so it's lights out and away we go.